Good day class, welcome to ES5 Computer Fundamentals and Programming. For this week, we will discuss about integrate JavaScript functions to a web page. So, what is JavaScript? JavaScript is the world's most popular programming language, and it is the programming language of the web, and it is easy to learn. So, just to make it clear to you guys that JavaScript is not the only one or not the only programming language that we could use in order for us to create web browsers or web pages. And there is the PHP and also the Python, which is also a programming language. So therefore, it is one of the world's most popular programming language. Okay, so what is the content of this lecture? The first one is to import the JavaScript to HTML, and then the second one is to be familiarized with the different functions in JavaScript. To start, let us learn first how to import JavaScript to HTML. So the first step, so here's the algorithm in importing the JS to HTML. So JS is just a shorthand for JavaScript. The first step is to create a JS file. So type your codes in text editor and save it as functionality.js. So the functionality name here is arbitrary. So I mean to say you could change it to another name. For example, my function.js or my code.js, so anything you want. And then the .js file or .js file format is the file format for JavaScript. And then the second one is to create an HTML file. So write your HTML in text editor and save it as index.html. So same as the JS file, the index is arbitrary. So I mean to say you could change it into anything else, like for example home.html or register or login.html. And then the .html is the file extension for HTML file. And then the third step, under the head tag of your HTML, so you have to type this code. So the script tag and then an attribute is equals to the functionality .js. So I mean to say we're going to load the functionality.js so that the functionality.js would control the elements inside the HTML file. Okay, so you will just type this inside the head tag. And then the fourth one, you should always remember that for starters like you, if you don't have an experience in programming, so you have to save your HTML, CSS, and JS file on the same directory or folder. So for this lecture, I'm just going to save our HTML file and JS file in the desktop folder. Okay, so let us create these files on our desktop folder. Okay, so I have here the index.html and the functionality.js. So let me pause first the video in order for me to create these files. So as you can see here, I have two files, the index.html and the functionality.js. So for index.html, it is located in our desktop folder, and the functionality.js is also in the desktop folder. So let me minimize this first and let's see if they are the same. So I just type in those files or codes to our text editor. So we could just look at the codes and try to compare if they are the same. So for me, this is the same. And for the functionality.js, we have the window on load, and then bar b1 bar para for paragraph, and also the on click function. Okay, so they are the same. So there's a lot of new things here, so we will discuss this later on. So let us try to run this first in our text or in our browser. So I'm gonna open the file index.html to our browser. So the title of this browser is JS import, and then our first example is to change the text through buttons. So this is our button, and this is our text. So we have to change this text using this button. So once we click this button, it would change the text of the user, or the text, I'm sorry. So it says here that hello user. So once we refresh this, it changes its text to its default value. And then once we click the button, click me. So once we click it, it would change its text. Let's go back to our code. So there's a lot of new things here. We have the button element here with a type attribute with a button value, and then it says here that there is an ID attribute with the btn1 as its value. Okay, so we have a paragraph, and this paragraph has an ID JS. Okay, and then for the functional.js, so let's take a look at our presentation. So let me present this first. Okay, so let's go to our be familiarized with different functions in JavaScript. So a while ago we have this functionality.js here. Okay, so there is this window onload, var, and then document.getElementById, and then this b1.onClick and inner HTML words. So what are those keywords that we have in our functional.js? So for window onload, so this a function is used in different conditions like displaying a print page or directing focus to user input fields as soon as the page is loaded. Okay, so this function. So what is a function? Okay, so the first time that we encounter the function is in MS Excel. Okay, so there's the sum function, min function, average function, and any other kinds of functions, and they perform certain tasks, or let's say procedure, or let's say calculations. So that is a function. It is a set of code that performs a certain task or procedure. It might be calculation, changing a text, and many more. Okay, so the name of the function is window onload. So what is this window? So once we open a browser, that is already the window, and then the onload is the function. So this function here, the onload, it directs the focus of the user to the input field as soon as the page is loaded. So meaning to say, it loads all the codes in our JavaScript. So meaning to say, if it doesn't load all the files or texts or codes inside the JS file, it won't be recognized as a function or codes to our HTML. So meaning to say, we do this loading in order for us to import the JS file successfully in our HTML. So meaning to say, this is very important in order for us to carry out some instructions in our HTML. So let's try it. Let's say I remove this window onload. Okay, and its corresponding closing curly brace. So I have here the var b1, var para, and then b1 dot onClick. Okay, so now I remove the window onload for this whole set of codes here. So let's see if this would still work. So once we click this button, it doesn't change. So let's take a look at the error. So we have to right click on the window and then click inspect to see the error. Okay, so as you can see here, there's an X1, meaning to say there's an error why it's not working. So once we click this one, it says here that uncut type error, cannot set property on click of now. So I mean to say it doesn't work because it hasn't loaded yet in our HTML. Okay, so it's not yet caught. It hasn't been set into our HTML. So meaning to say this onClick here is unrecognizable to our HTML. So that's why even if we click this many times, it doesn't change the text. We have to load this property onto our HTML. And that is the job of the window unload. Okay, so we have to put it back and then save it again. So anything that you change here, so for example, if you updated the code, you have to save it and then refresh the page. So as you can see here, the error is gone, and once we try to click this button, so it works again. So I mean to say the button on click is recognizable. Okay, so it loads already into our HTML. So next, var. So var keyword is used to declare a variable. Okay, so var is a keyword. It says here that we have the var b1, var para. So how does variable work? So remember on your math lessons, a variable is a container of a value. Okay, say for example, let x is equal to 5, not greater than. So it's equal to 5. So the variable here is the x, and then the constant or value is 5. So we're assigning a value to a variable, okay, through equal sign. So same goes for var, meaning to say we're trying to create a variable which has a name b1. So we're just um, replacing this by var, and then x is equals to 5. Okay, so as we go back to our code, says here that we have a variable b1 and variable para, and we're going to assign a value to b1 and para. And what are those? The document that get element by id. So what is this function? It says here that this is a method or a function that is used in order to access the element with the specified id inside the parentheses. Okay, it's like saying that in our document, which is the HTML document, we have to get the element by its id, and the name of that id is btn1. So which of this element has an id btn1? It is the button. Okay, it has an id btn1. So meaning to say in JavaScript, in order for us to access the element that has an id btn1, which is the button, is we have to assign it to b1. So I mean to say b1 would represent this button here with the id btn1 to our JavaScript. Okay, so this is button. And then same goes for para, which is a paragraph. So in our document, we have to get the element by its id, and the name of the id is js, and assign it to para. So which element has an id js? That is our paragraph. So I mean to say this para here would represent the paragraph element. Okay, so that's it. And then the next one is the b1.onClick. So it is an onClick event. So I mean to say once the user clicks this element, so there's something that would execute, or let's say a function that would be executed by the program. So that is used in order to execute a function when a user clicks an element. Okay, so that's the b1.onClick. So as you can see here, there's a function onClick, which is equal to, so this is how we define a function in JavaScript. So there are other resources that might give you some other uh, way of declaring a function like this one. function. Here's a tooltip function, something like this. So this is just a shortcut or shorthand for that function. Okay, so this is just a function, and then inside this function is a implementation. Okay, so you have to close the implementation inside the open and close curly brace like this. Okay, so that's it. So once you click this B1 here, or button 1, once you click on it, so what is B1 again? It is the button in our HTML. So once you click the button in our HTML, it would execute this function, okay, or statement or code. Okay, so the next one is the inner HTML. So it is a property that allows JS or JS code to manipulate the content being displayed by the website. Okay, so what is the content of the para? So what is the value of para? Para is change this text. Okay, so we have to access the para element using the inner HTML and change its value into hello user. So what is the value of para? So para is our paragraph in HTML, and the value or the content that is enclosed in paragraph is change this text. Okay, so we have to assign a new value to para, which is equal to hello user. Okay, so that's why once we click this button 1 here, it would assign a new value to paragraph into hello user. And that's it for our para. Okay, so I hope that you understand this. So we have to discuss more functions. So how about a text box? So what is a text box? Text box is a rectangular area on the screen where you can enter a text. Say for example in Facebook, most of you have already logged in Facebook or any other accounts, social media accounts. The website asks you for email and password. So the rectangular area where you type in your email or password are called the text box. Okay, so it collects the data that you entered using your keyboard and then sends it to the server of the website, and then try to look at on their database if it matches a user, and then once it matches, it would send back to you a response that you have successfully logged in, and then you could access your account. Okay, so let us try to manipulate the text box. So create these files on your desktop. So again, we'll just have to edit the index.html, or you could create another file for this example. Okay, so let me first pause the video in order for me to type these codes. Okay, so I've typed the codes for our second example. So this example here adds two numbers using text boxes and a button. Okay, so I have an input, two inputs with the type of text, placeholder, enter a number, and then text 1, text 2, and of course the button, and then I move the paragraph to the lower part, and then I added more variables that would access the elements from our HTML. So we have the text box 1 or TB1 that would represent the txt1 from our HTML as a variable in our functionality.js. So same goes for TB2, which is text box 2, would access the text 2. Okay, and then what else? The answer variable that would access the element which has an ID result, which is the paragraph. Okay, so let's try to run this on our browser. So I have here enter a number, enter a number. So this is a text box, and then this enter a number here is a placeholder. So remember that I specified the placeholder here, so it's another property of, or an attribute of the input, which has a type text. So it has a placeholder, enter a number. So it gives a tip to the user what kind of data it should enter. Okay, say for example we have a number 5 and then another number 3. So once we click this one, it's supposed to add these numbers. So once we click it, says here that it is 53. Why? Because in JavaScript class, the plus symbol represents concatenation or addition operation. So I'm not sure if you still remember the concatenation function in Microsoft Excel. So the concatenation function combines two strings or two texts as a single word. Okay, so once we retrieve a value to text boxes, by default it is a string or just a plain text. So this 5 and 3 here is just a plain text. It doesn't treat it as a number. Okay, so in order for us to make this into a number, we have to use another function. Okay, so we're going to try to convert this text here into a number, and the name of the function is parse int. So this is how we're going to use it, parse int, and then another one is parse int. Okay, so this parse int here is only limited to number value of a string. Okay, so for example we have A, B, and C, and then this one is 5, so it's not a number. But if we try to enter a 3 as a value, once we click it, it will become 8. Okay, so the not a number is indicates that one of the value that you are parsing into an int value is not a number. Okay, so we parse int a text, but it doesn't have a corresponding value to a number. Okay, so for example, if 3, this is a text 3, so once the parse int tries to locate what kind of number it is, it would check that it is, or it would find out that it is a number 3. Okay, so once we hit click me, so it would add these two numbers. So that's all for now for our function. Thank you, and I hope that you learned something new.